And Hi everybody, welcome to the My Future Business show. And before I tell you who I have the pleasure of chatting with today, let me just tell you that in his first 20 years of business, he was dedicated to mastering small, medium and large businesses by working for companies that include Vodafone, General Motors, Mercedes-Benz, all in basically senior management positions. He started with the online marketing in about 2005 and has made over $100,000 online with just a single product as an affiliate. Since then, he went on to set up, grow and sell an SEO business that started with a single domain that he bought for a couple of $100s and turned it into a $1 million per year operation within 3 short years. He's also sold more than $10 million of his own products, services, domains and websites online, which is amazing. My guest is no other than James Schramko from superfastbusiness.com. How you going, James?
Good, thanks, Rick.
That's excellent, excellent. Look, thank you so much for your time today. My audience will be chomping at hear this recording when it comes out. So what have you been up to? How have you been?
I've been good. Just doing my usual routine. Got a pretty steady routine that I like. I'm in this sort of phase of staying at home for a month or two, which is rare, and enjoying it a lot, getting a lot of surfing in.
Yeah, I noticed recently in one of your feeds, Sally Fitzgibbon was out there surfing. You took a few snaps.
Yeah, I saw. I just saw her out the window because my desk here faces out there, and I was just deciding whether I go for a surf. I saw this girl tearing across the wave face with uncommonly good skill,
finesse.
Like she really surfs very well, and I knew straight away this is not a regular person. I put the binoculars on. It's most definitely her.
Yeah, you can tell they're cut from a different material, can't you?
Yeah, people who are really at the top level of anything, you know, they're just they put in so much work, they put in so much time, they're just significantly better than the average person.
Yep.
And we get everything from backpackers who have just bought a board for $20 on Gumtree. Yep. And, you know, giving it a shot versus, you know, a world pro who's, you know, often second in the world. I wish I could say she was the world champion. She's so close so often. But yeah, to watch them is really joyful.
I noticed that you had a post also on John, and you know how he came up through the Grom ranks, and now he's the champion. That's just an amazing story.
Well, I think the interesting thing there is, like, even when he was 8, he'd already been surfing for 6 years, which is, so by the time he was 8, he'd surfed longer than me. I'm 3 years into it. He already knew he was going to be the world champion, and it took him until he was 24 until he did it. But he's just so much better than his peer group. You know, he won it before the end of the season. There's still one more event.
It's amazing, isn't it? Do you think he could be likened to the likes of Slater?
I think if he keeps his sports head, if he can manage it now, then there's a good chance that he could be, because he's got enough time. He's got another 20 years to win 10 more championships, and it would be a pretty hard feat to do. I mean, Slater is by far and away with 11 world championships, and he's 45. I mean, it's just phenomenal.
It's crazy.
And unfortunately, one of his best sparring partners ever passed away, Andy Irons. So, but he really, you know, that's that level of commitment and chipping away at it for so long. And I think about that because he's about my age, and he, you know, the amount of pressure that he would have been under, and the constant fight to keep sharp and healthy and mentally renewed. And one thing I've learned about business is that there's a lot of the mental game involved.
Well, that's the thing. I wanted to touch on that. So one of the things that I always think about, you know, I follow the likes of Tony Robbins, and he says that 80% of success, be it financial or personal success, is the psychological game, the inside game, and the other 20% is mechanical. What's your thought on those numbers?
Yeah, I'd love to know how he came up with it, but I would say that it seems to be a major differentiator. It's especially in my world, where a lot of the stuff we do is virtual and online. You have to conceptualize it. Like, you can't go out and touch our products or
No.
services. They're not physical.
Mm-hmm.
They're intangible.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have good mindset constructs to be able to be strategic about it, to visualize what your business looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to know your numbers. You have to have a good relationship with yourself, with your own ability to produce content and put yourself out there. You're always subjecting yourself to the possibility of rejection or ridicule.
Mm-hmm.
And then as an employer, when you're employing a team and you're responsible for other people, and also, you've got legal responsibilities to customers, there's
Yes.
a lot on your plate. So I do think it requires a certain amount of concentration and focus and discipline and skill to be able to manage all of that.
So you say you initially your first 20 odd years, I guess your initial stomping grounds, the place where you learned about business was with those large businesses. How much of that actually transferred into what you do now, and have you changed a lot in terms of what you believe and what you now teach others?
A lot of the things that I learnt didn't come from business. I brought a lot of things from outside business to business.
Mm-hmm.
And they were sort of life lessons. I did a whole series on this at one point, and I'm currently writing a book on it because they were interesting stories, everything from my time sailing to working with my grandfather in a very tiny little micro business. Like, he had a timber broking business in his backyard in a shed with a couple of telephones and a fax machine. And a lot of the fundamental beliefs that I held then have remained true to this day, and they've definitely given me the foundations for having more success than some of my peer group. And a lot of the things that I learned in the big companies were direct lessons in what not to do.
Yeah.
For example, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of cover your ass sort of mentality and politics in large companies. And those things used to make me wild, like really drive me insane. In fact, a couple of times in my career, I even changed jobs because I got ripped off or denied a success because of politics, and it seemed unfair. So I like to run a meritocracy with my own business. So I think I learnt a lot of lessons, but I've worked in tiny little businesses and I've worked in really large multinational organisations. Some of the things that I did learn that were good from the big companies were things like brand values. When I was at Mercedes-Benz in particular, a lot of people would come for a job there, and I'd ask them why they're interested in working there, and it didn't even matter what the job was. It could be to detail a car. They were still interested because it's Mercedes-Benz. So people attributed a very high perception of brand value there, and Mercedes fastidiously guarded that reputation. They had extremely specific rules around how the star must look, how the spacing of the words, the font, what colours you could use. They were extremely rigid with brand guidelines. And how they regulated that. So those things are interesting. And also learned about having a lifetime approach to customers. So that really impacted my business model, pricing and packaging philosophies. I wanted to have a premium sort of positioning in the market. I didn't want to be Kia or Daihatsu. I wanted to be Mercedes-Benz in my market. I want to be a really good quality product, and I wanted to be able to look after people properly and not have to skimp. And I wanted to have a lifetime customer. I wanted to be able to do business with them for a long time and not just one time.
Not just not just a transaction.
Right. And at one point, Mercedes-Benz had a slogan that was the best or nothing, and I thought that was a good one. They probably should have stuck to that, like when Coke was it. It says something about the brand, and it's a philosophy. And one common mistake that I see business owners make is they really compromise in some areas, and they don't have the best of anything, and they don't give people a compelling reason why they would want to do business with them, and they certainly don't retain customers, and then they get into a price positioning, and then they go out of business.
Because it's very difficult with contracting markets in every industry sector to continue to provide products and services on price alone, isn't it?
There's a lot to be said for, don't be a Blockbuster. If you're in a contracting market and you stay there, well, then that's your own problem. There's also massive growth markets. There's a guy called Richard Koch talks about the star principle, but it's a very simple idea. You invest in high growth companies, high growth markets, and the biggest market shareholder in a high growth market. I mean, that's a very simple formula. If you go with the biggest market shareholder in a fast growing market, well, then your portfolio expands, dramatically or geometrically. So why would you position yourself in a contracting market and not pay attention to the science? You don't want to be a Kodak, you don't want to be a Blockbuster. If these other markets are emerging, you better wake up and move or die.
Yeah, well, they say that you're doing one of two things in business: either you're growing or dying.
Koch put out a book called the 80-20. The 80-20 principle itself is probably rarely understood by business owners, and if it's understood by the business principal, it's almost certainly not understood by the staff of the business. And that is that only a few things really matter, and we should focus our energy there.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly not a new ideology, is it? The 80-20 rule for those that are in the game for any period of time.
Well, it's certainly highlighted by what Wilfredo Pareto, and it applied to land ownings. He found that 20% of the people owned 80% of the land in ancient Italy.
Way back when, and prior to the quality circles and things of that nature, where Deming and the likes started to take it on as well.
Yeah, a long time before Deming. And this is the interesting thing. A lot of the things that could help a business owner are already in history. They're there to look up, they're there to research, they're there to pay attention to. So it's a matter of finding them. So, I love finding out about W. Edwards Deming and about Pareto and Koch and all the rest of them, because, and then you can go into Goldratt and Peter Drucker and there's so many great people have come before us. We can learn the lessons from them and apply that to business. So one of my real roles for my own students is to take all these lessons, apply them into business, prove the results, and then just tell them what works. Basically get to the punchline.
So a bit of a learn, implement, and share approach to your business.
Yes, and that's what I've done the whole time since I've been in business, is to research and learn, apply the things as fast as possible, understand what the lessons are, and then you take what works and scale that up and throw out what doesn't work.
I'm very interested in your travels. I've seen some fantastic images of places that you've been and seen, and I just wonder how those travels, if at all, translate into evolving your philosophies around business. And could you reflect on maybe one of the biggest things or travel experiences that you've had that's had the most impact?
Well, I mean, it's a huge impact. I was pretty much stuck in a local business scenario for the last years of my career, which was about eight or 9 years ago. I quit my job. Since then, I travel around the world every year, and it gives you perspective. As soon as you get in the plane, your brain can start to observe different things. I like listening to the conversations even in the airport, but you learn different cultures, different currencies, different economic philosophies. Like if you, even just sitting in a cafe in Baltimore, watching the news on the TV, listening to the waitresses talking to the customers and listening to tables beside me, you get a real insight into American culture, for example. And there's a lot of Americans, and they dominate our media and attention if you let them, especially with things like the election on right now. And because it's such a large population, and because they do have an influence on our culture and the world of business, it's good to pay attention to that stuff. And I've become an export marketer, I guess, in the eyes of an Australian business perspective. A lot of our revenue, more than half of it, comes from overseas. So the North American market, the UK market, even places like Dubai was our single biggest customer, was by developing those markets. So if you want to develop a market in a place, you go there.
Yeah.
And you understand the culture, you set up that infrastructure, you build your authority, and then you stay in touch with them. And so I've learnt a lot, whether it's driving around Europe. I landed in Germany, went to Switzerland and then Italy and then around to France and did 6,500 kilometres, and then went over to the UK and then came back home one time. But I've been to so many cool places like Dominican Republic, Belize, Mexico, some of the less known places, and then all of the usual ones like Thailand and the Philippines and
Yeah, well, the best experiences are off the tour bus, aren't they?
Yeah, although occasionally I did a tour bus, but that was more when I was at Mercedes-Benz and we would go to a place as a group. And it's fun to travel as a group, but you're not really doing a lot of the things that locals would do. So the great thing about the online community, and even with Facebook, is that you could pretty much find someone living near wherever you are, wherever you happen to be. There's going to be someone, even an expat, residing nearby. And I've got friends all around the world now, which is great. But yeah, I guess I've changed my mental model of the world, because every time I go somewhere new, it just expands my database. It's like one of those games that you play that have multiple levels, when you level up to the next level and then the next level to the next level. Or even if you watch a Netflix series, like by the time you get to the end of the entire Game of Thrones series, you've got a much more expanded view of that world and those characters and who's who and how they react and what to expect from them than when you start the first episode.
Yeah, you seem to love the immersive experience of, just getting involved and meeting new cultures, and I think that's an amazing thing, because even prior to talking with you and knowing what I knew of you, this whole travel component and how you've expanded on the basis of your travel was really interesting to me. So thank you for sharing that. I took a lot away from that, as I'm sure our audience and our listeners will as well. When you first started out, did you have a shop front, or has it always been online?
Well, I started out when I was at the Mercedes dealership. The last job that I had, I started my online business with a little laptop computer and a 20-foot cable plugged into the phone line, trying to figure out how to build a website. Because I thought, and this is 10 years ago, maybe even 11 years ago, I registered my first domain. And I just figured it'd be important to learn how to build a website. I just had this idea that there's something going on here.
Yeah.
Customers were just coming in so educated about the models before Mercedes would tell us what we have coming down the pipeline. These customers had printouts from all the sites showing us.
They already know.
My parents' travel agency was getting decimated by customers just booking their flights online. And I just wanted to understand this thing, and I struggled with that. And I built it all basically from my TV couch and from my bedroom, and got it to the point where I actually took up a spare room in the house towards the end there. And then there was, the flick of the switch. One day I got my online business to the point where I could quit my job. And my job was paying around $300,000 a year. It wasn't chump change.
No, you weren't short.
And no, there's never been an office other than a portion of the residence that I live in. So
that's amazing.
We're broadcasting today from the beach here at Manly, and I happen to be the only person in the country who's in my team. The rest of them are overseas.
Oh yes.
But actually, there's a couple of contractors who are local, but for the most part, they're overseas.
Wow. Okay. So, how big is the business base? Is there many dozens, or are they all over the world? At the beginning of the
year, we had over 60 people. Now we're down to about 9 full-timers. And that's because we sold off 2 large divisions.
Okay. Yep. Fantastic.
And included the teams that belonged to those departments.
Is that part of the, I guess, the long-term strategy for the business to diversify, go down a little bit different path based on what we've already just spoken about? Is that where the business is going?
It's actually more to simplify. We were already in the current business that we do, but we had expansions on there. You know, as most entrepreneurs, I get ideas and I'm able to grow businesses. And I did. I grew out my SEO business, as you said at the beginning of this show, to a 7-figure business. And one of my students, who I met 7 or 8 years ago, followed my advice and took up a business model reselling that SEO service. And he got so successful at it in the Dubai market that he became the #1 biggest customer of our business, to the point where he was ordering half of our stuff.
Amazing.
Like, he took up half our supply. And as his coach, I said, okay, so you either need to cut us out of the picture or buy the business, because it just makes sense now. And I said, if you buy the business, you'll save yourself 2 or 3 years worth of building it, because I think we're up to 7 years by then, 6 or 7 years. And that just made sense, because he got an immediate saving on every dollar he spent. He got like 50 cents back.
Okay.
It just made sense. And he's now done really, really well with that business unit since March. So in 6 months, it's been a stunning success for him. It's been fantastic for me, because I got financially rewarded for something I grew from scratch, and I've got pure focus on the coaching side now. And now we're working on our next big project outside of our core business, which would be sort of 7 years sort of plan. It's a 5 to 7 year thing, and then we'll sell that.
Right. Yeah. So like a life cycle thing.
Yeah, we know what we're doing, and you know, I think we'll progressively sell off parts of the business that no longer make sense for us or we're not passionate about, and we'll collect the value for that. I really enjoyed the selling part. I enjoyed selling the business units. It was fun to complete something. Yeah,
finalise it.
You know, like it's the virtual equivalent of buying a block of land, building a house on it, making it into a commercial success, and then selling it you know, with tenants. And it was great.
So, you know, nowadays it wouldn't be, I suggest for a long time, it's not ever really been about the money for you, because I think a lot of people maybe get into business for the wrong reasons. You don't come across as somebody who was driven by the dollar. Would that be fair to say?
No, I was definitely driven by the dollar up until recently, because I have 4 kids and I live in Sydney, which is apparently the second most expensive place to live in the world. And you know, it's not bad to have some money, and I like to keep lots and lots of money
in places.
Probably because when I was a kid, maybe 17 or 18, my parents lost everything, and I had to go and get a job. I was actually maybe 19. I had to quit studies and go and get a job, and I had that job until 8 years ago, and it had a big impact on me. And I felt like I don't want to put my kids through that. I don't want them to go through that situation where they're stressed about money. I
can understand that.
I worked very, very hard in my career. I reckon I've, you know, like dog years. I reckon every year of my work, you know, it felt like I'd worked 5 normal people's year per year. You know, I rose quickly through the ranks. At a young age, I was successful already. By the time I was 24, I was the #1 BMW salesperson in Australia, and then I repeated that at Mercedes-Benz by the time I was about 26 or 27, and by the time I was 29, I was running a dealership.
Wow.
So I went really well in the career side of things, and I was definitely needed the money, and I was motivated to make money with the online stuff. And after a point, when you have enough money that you have more money coming in than what you spend, that's kind of a tipping point.
Yep.
I haven't had debt for about 6 or 7 years now, which is great.
Nice feeling.
I've got a nice surplus. I feel more confident and relaxed, and I don't mind surfing. Could I make a lot more money? Absolutely. So it did shift in the last few years from being about money to being about lifestyle design. So I changed my routine. I 3 years ago I took up surfing, which I do every day. I now also mix it up with gym. I eat better. I sleep a lot. I watch Netflix movies and go and see comedians and stuff. So I'm doing stuff that would have been considered an outrageous luxury to me 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're living life, to put it simply.
Exactly. Because I have now time resource and financial resource, it means that I can choose.
And you've not built yourself a business that's acting more like a jail, for the mind at least. So many people that we work with feel trapped by what they've created for themselves, and most of them, I wouldn't say all of them, but most of them have just really built themselves another job, another form of a job.
That's right. They'll basically switch from 40 hours a week to 80 hours a week so that they can, have the worst boss in the world themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is a lot to do with business model, pricing and packaging, because I see that, and it's definitely one thing that I help people with enormously, because I work with a lot of A-type entrepreneurs. In my highest level coaching group, which is called Silver Circle, I have a lot of 7 and 8 figure business owners, and they're very driven. There's no issue with their motivation or they're wanting to action things. These guys and girls, they're basically just so driven. It's just somewhere in their core. And a lot of my role with them is to soften them up a bit and say, hey, spend some time with your partner, play with your kids. Be careful what you wish for, because you can have it now. And that's why I don't want an office. I don't want to drive somewhere 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I don't want to wear a suit and tie.
No.
So these are all compromises. I'm all about no compromise, designing the lifestyle you want, and taking back control, and not submitting yourself to society norms. There's absolutely no reason in the world why anyone should have to drive off to a workplace between 9 and 5 in a suit. And I don't know what function a tie actually serves. and sit in traffic with everyone else doing the same thing and then come back. That is just insane.
It is insane. I agree with you.
It doesn't make sense.
I agree with you.
This is the year 2016.
Yeah.
And if you do that, it's only because you decided that that's what you want to do, or you didn't realize you actually even had a choice.
Well, it's actually, it's a matter of how you've been conditioned in many respects, isn't it? For a long term, since you first started working, it could be.
It's before work. It's school. Schooling was designed to train people to follow instructions
and comply.
During the textile, revolution, they needed people to man the mills and to process, to do machines. And basically, while they're off there, they need to stick kids somewhere and then get them ready to be able to take instructions. And it's the whole school system's broken. But Peter Drucker was talking about this in the 60s. He predicted the collapse of education, and he predicted the rise of the knowledge worker. And guess what? Business schools are going broke.
Yeah, absolutely.
If a business school goes broke, then isn't that a sign there's something wrong with the system?
From a fundamental level, absolutely it is. And you're seeing a lot more, smaller businesses doing far better because they are true knowledge workers who are educated and making a difference to others who wish to be more like them than the drone that actually gets in the car and does the 40, 50 hours a week for somebody else that they don't have a passion for. You see it all too often, don't you?
The thing that blew my mind was when I made more profit in a single year than my previous employer. And my previous employer was a $50 million a year revenue business with 73 staff in a $12 million building with $20 million worth of stock. And my little business with no office and a virtual team with an invisible product had a 7-figure profit that was larger than the profit that the old business made. And in fact, even my first year online, I made more profit than my first year in that place because it was losing money every year.
Bleeding it.
There's been a lot of change, and you either get on board it or get sucked up by it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to touch a little bit on your community and maybe ask you what's the thing that you get the most out of? What's the reward for you from your community? What's the thing you love about them the most?
Oh, Rick, it's the money. No, I'm kidding. It's the thing I love the most.
Oh, that's it. Sorry, I got to go.
I coach people,
Mm.
and the thing that I love the most is when they have a significant change. I can have impact on them, and everyone I'm coaching has impact on other people. So there's one lady I coach who I met her having dinner one night in Melbourne at someone else's event about 7 or 8 years ago, and from there she rose all the way to the top of the Facebook ads game where she's consulting for the White House.
Wow.
And very large multinationals. And now what she does, she helps work-at-home mums become social media managers with a training course and support, and she's helping lots and lots of these people, dozens a month.
That's crazy.
Come on board this program, and to see what she's done with that, it's just phenomenal. And same with that student of mine who was sitting in the audience when I spoke in Dubai, who came on board my program, took my coaching advice, became my best customer, and then bought my business for the largest sale that I've ever made in my life, excluding a property.
Yeah.
And then there's, so many. Even my friend in e-commerce,
Yep.
Ezra.
Yep.
In the last year, he went from $6 million a year to $25 million a year in revenue. He tries to tip credit on me for stuff like that, but I'll take some of it. But I get excited. Or even my very first $1 million student was this little kid in the UK who was doing graphics and selling them for like $17. And I did this little partnership with him, and then I gave him a few ideas, and then we sort of came up with this concept of a WordPress website that has the templates built in, and we call it OptimizePress. And then I watched him within 12 months. He went from zero to over $1 million in revenue with that one product, and it was just so exciting to see that. It's kind of like being an idea gardener and seeing it harvested and bearing fruit from nothing.
I mean, if you don't know much about OptimizePress, you've pretty much had your head in the sand, haven't you? It's pretty well known. That's an amazing story.
Product, and I got on early onto other things, like lead pages. I really helped establish that in certain parts of the community, and I like to. I'm often behind the scenes, put it that way. A lot of people I coach at a very high level, they don't bang their chest about receiving help or whatever, and they kind of keep me behind the scenes. But you would definitely know lots of them. And there's around about 30 at the highest level. And I love working with these people and seeing what they do. So if each one of those people has somewhere between $1 million and $25 million business, then I know that I'm having a significant impact. So that it does feel good, and I like that feeling of success and achievement
and contribution.
Yeah, it is. I'm kind of like a parent type. Yeah. That's why, with having kids was good practice. Having a forum is like being a parent, and coaching entrepreneurs is a little bit like herding cats. But if you can do it, it's very rewarding.
Very rewarding. Now, with coaching, do you turn to somebody? I mean, everybody should have a coach, should they not?
I don't have a coach.
No, not anymore?
Never. I've never had a coach. I'll get coaching in certain areas. I have a surfing coach who, from time to time, will surf with me and give me some tips. I draw from everyone around me. I'm blessed to have an amazing community. When I'm getting asked thousands of questions, I get to answer them, which means that it lifts me. I'm constantly learning. Right now in my project management board, I have 6 or 7 training things queued up, and I'm learning every single day. I'm consuming something. Today I was watching a customized training program for me about proper stretches to do with foam rollers and stuff for my health and fitness. But I listen to things, I watch things, I read things, I speak to people at a higher level. I mean, even in today's coaching calls that I've done, I got some incredible insights. One guy's just been to the top 4 events in North America, and in 15 minutes he's able to tell me all the highlights. So it's kind of like I got a little travel around North America without having to get on a plane.
Without going anywhere.
Yeah, so again, it's like having backstage access to VIPs, and you can see stuff other people don't see. And it reminds me of when I was selling Mercedes-Benz to celebrities and famous people, prime ministers, movie stars, billionaires, and I got to go to their house, sit in their kitchen, cruise around their garage, do deals. One of them even. A billionaire pushed his checkbook across the table and told me just to fill it out. You know, it's like it was just like
that's surreal,
crazy stuff. And I'm been really privileged to have access to that. And one of the keys to that is to be cool about it and to not drop names, not to brag about it, or
pompous.
Leverage off it. You know, and that makes it easy for people to ask for help from you.
Yeah, well, you do come across as somebody who's extremely approachable and humble, and you know, for the matter of fact being, because I know that it turns off a lot of people, those who are not, and all the time.
Depending on the market.
Yeah.
In some markets, it's extremely expected to be, you know, tooting your own horn and bragging about wins and scalp taking, especially in the US market. It's really quite tolerated and almost expected.
Okay, so it's almost like a marketing tool in many respects.
Matt, most definitely. Some of the key people, like every second word they drop is Richard Branson.
Oh yeah.
And that for them that's how they position themselves as being the guy. Over here, of course, in Australia or the UK, doesn't fly so well. We're not so much into celebrity endorsements, and we like to cut people down more, don't we?
just a little come back down to earth. Look, so far it's already been 3/4 of an hour, and it's just flown by like that. If you don't mind, I'd like to just touch on a few more things before we sort of wrap up. One of them is, you know, I talk a lot about the different elements to a business, and oftentimes you see a small business owner, not only are they dealing with the front of shop if they've got a traditional shop front, you know, they might go into the new area for them called marketing, and then suddenly be faced with all these different elements, you know, your copywriting and your conversion and how to get people looking at your offers, info products, podcasting and advertising, and the list goes on and on and on, as you well know. So if you were talking to that one-man business who operates that storefront and wanted to take their business online, what would you say to them? Would you recommend against it? Would you have a particular way for them to go about it?
Well, the first thing is, if you're a one-man business, you're not a business, you're a job. So that's the first thing I'd say. Until you start getting arms and legs, you're in a deep situation that you need to rectify. You know, if you don't turn up for work and the business doesn't make money, that's not a business. So danger signs already. Secondly, I'd say what we just heard there was kind of like a tactics grenade, and it's pretty common. People sort of wading into this, they get overwhelmed very quickly. It doesn't take, you know, a couple of emails or a few courses and you'll be well and truly underwater.
A tactics grenade, that's an awesome phrase.
I hear it all the time. I'm in the community, they go, oh, I think I'm going to do a tripwire, a webinar, some Facebook ads, do my funnel, have an ascension. Like, they just rattle off these words. They're so comfortable saying them, but they don't understand. Some cases they don't even understand who their customer is or what they're selling, but they're very excited about these sexy tactics. I would go through the profit formula, and I'd make it quite simple for them. The first thing is you've got to have your own plan, and don't worry about all the people coming into your shop trying to sell you bus shelter advertising, the side of a bus, fridge magnets, number plate frames. You name it, you know, window signage. You're going to get inundated if you're in any kind of business with marketing offers. You have to figure out your plan first, and then only if something fits that should you talk about it. Maybe you don't need to be in the yellow pages or what have you. So I'd go through the profit formula, which most businesses don't know, unfortunately, and I'd tell them where to put their attention. And the profit formula, all levers or whatever you want to call them, is leads times conversions equals customers.
Yep.
Times the dollar amount, times the frequency, times the margin equals profit. So if you slow that down, the most important elements are not the ones people focus on. Everyone obsesses on leads, prospecting, traffic, just dominating the conversation. Where do I get customers? Where do I get traffic? The most important numbers are conversions.
Yeah.
So it's working out, how can you clearly articulate your offer? How can you make it an easy decision for someone to go ahead, because then you don't need as many people to talk to, to find if they can understand that conversion. And the other one, the hidden one, is frequency. It's great to sell your thing for a higher amount or put your prices up, and it's great to cut costs, but you can only cut your costs by 100%.
Yeah.
But the real one there is frequency. If you can go from selling someone once to selling them twice, that's an easy way to double your profit. If you could go from selling once to selling 20 times or 30 times, then that's outstanding.
So what we're talking about is increasing the average lifetime value of each customer or client.
We are, and we're specifically talking about increasing the amount of clients that you actually get from the same amount of leads.
Right.
And increasing the number of transactions per client.
Right. Yep.
Which will help you get your lifetime value of your customer. Your CLV is going to go up, customer lifetime value. And once you know what that number is, and most people don't, then you can invest that into marketing to get yourself a customer.
Right.
So, and then the next thing is you should track all your marketing. If you can't track it to a customer, back to the lead source, then you probably shouldn't be spending that money.
Right. So you've got to know your metrics.
Yeah, it's like running a trace die in a medical experiment. And even in the car dealership, even 10 years ago, before we're doing online stuff, I'd still go to an effort to have a marketing tracking sheet. Yep. And anything we did, whether it was a sponsorship of a doctor's night or what have you, we'd see if we could create a device to track those sales, whether it's coupons or a direct response letter with a tear out thing, or bring this into the dealership, we'll give you a half a case of red wine with any purchase, or we'll give you a bottle of wine for any test drive. At least we could track the source, and then we know where our marketing investment was best spent.
So are you an advocate of online and digital marketing, like your traditional lumpy mail and direct mail? For like a traditional sort of shop front owner who wants a bit of both, would you recommend getting into one strategy or doing both?
I think for a lot of owners, online marketing is a bit of a red herring. I think if you're in a shop and you have people walking into the shop, that's your number one prospect right now.
Right,
that's a living, breathing human in your shop. I would be wanting to get their details, and I'd certainly be wanting to make a sale, because the online stuff is a lot of noise and not as much signal. So you can get all excited about having a lot of followers on your Facebook page and people on your Twitter and stuff. People get absorbed with it, but it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't translate into a sale. It's just a waste of resource. So I'd be focused on buyers. A very important part of that process is to understand the pain points of your customers so that you can articulate the solutions properly. So whatever you're doing, I do like direct response marketing because you can track the source. Yeah. I do like online marketing because that's where I've focused for the last 10 years, and I've gotten better at it. The other type of marketing, and it's not to be underestimated, and I think it's getting more important, is actually branding. And it might sound weird for someone who's got a direct response bias to say that, but you've got to have good logos, you've got to have a nice brand, you have to be memorable, and big companies like Apple and Mercedes-Benz and Coca-Cola, they don't need to track source so much because they've got such a strong brand. And you can have a strong brand in your market, even as a small player. And that's why I've gone down the path of things like trademarks. Yep. I've hired quality designers for my logos and my apps and my web pages because it makes a huge difference. I mean, you point to me to any successful author or expert that is not using custom brands for their book covers or websites.
Yeah,
so
of course.
But people start out trying to do all this stuff themselves. I can tell you, if you're a plumber or an electrician or an accountant or a finance broker, you have no business learning how to build a website.
No.
None whatsoever.
No.
Or trying to dick around on Photoshop or giving it to the kid down the road who's doing a design course at university. You got to stop that stuff.
Yeah.
That's silly stuff.
That's a major takeaway for the audience today is, you want to fast track your way to results and like you're saying, not dicking around with things you're not good at. And just to reflect a little bit, basically, if you can't deposit it, it doesn't matter. And, we want to hit psychological triggers more times than less in the pursuit of conversions. Would that be fair?
Yeah, look, getting a professional photographer and hiring a high caliber designer, someone like Greg Merrilees, for example, who's in Melbourne and does most of the stuff for me and all of my clients, it's really actually achievable.
Yep.
Guys like that followed my advice and have moved from a physical office to a virtual team. They're able to come to the market with a really differentiated offering. They even do like recurring design packages.
Yep.
You can pay like hundreds a month and have unlimited work, so you can get all your letterheads, your logos, your website and all that stuff designed by a professional designer as you roll out new products, as you add extra branches to your business, etc. As you're going to open up your Twitter page or your Facebook page or your Instagram page or your LinkedIn profile, you can have a proper designer doing this instead of you playing around with WYSIWYG software and trying to resize pictures.
Yeah.
I mean, if it looks cheap and amateurish, it's not going to help your conversions.
No, and that's another good takeaway. I you see it so often, don't you? This whole attempt at doing something you're not very good at. Which
it's very common because people have this sense of false economy. They think that they're saving, but they're killing themselves.
Well, the only thing valuable that we all have the same amount of is time. It's those who spend it wisely, I suspect, are the ones who succeed the most.
Right, and Richard Branson's on record for saying the only reason he can run 300 businesses is he actually have to do nothing in them.
Yeah, fair call. Yeah, absolutely. I just have to say, my audience is absolutely going to love this call, this chat that we're having. It's been laid back, it's been informative, it's been a lot of fun. I just would like to just touch on live events quickly, and talk a little bit about how you got into live events, and because I admire somebody who can do a live event, because I speak to a lot of people in the smaller businesses that have this idea that maybe one day they could stand up in front of a crowd. How hard is it?
Well, it's not that hard. You just find a venue and put it in your diary and then
do it.
Run it.
And do
so,
it. Yeah.
I've got a pretty comprehensive event checklist now after running quite a few, and I've shared it with some clients of mine, and they've had great events.
Okay.
How I started was, if you go way back, firstly I was hiring multiple salespeople and training them at once in the boardroom at the dealership. I was getting very good at sales to my clients who had bought 7, 8, 9, 10 cars from me.
Yep.
They said, could you come and train our sales team in the finance advisory office, because our salespeople suck. And whatever you're doing to sell all these cars,
it's working.
can you come and teach them? And so I went to my boss and I said, can I train this guy's financial planners? And he said, sure, but charge them plenty.
Yeah. Yeah.
I invoiced them $5,000 and did a half-day training. And with that money, I went and bought a laptop, which is the one I learnt to build a website on. And it's about 10 years ago. And so I did the training thing. And the funny thing is, when I turned up for the training, I had my PowerPoint ready to go, but the guy who had the key for the cupboard with the projector didn't come into work, so there was no projector, and I had to do it off my PowerPoint printouts, my backup copy. It went okay, but I did that, and then became sort of popular in a internet marketing forum, and they were having a meetup in Queensland, so I drove up there, and they were saying, hey, if anyone want to share some ideas. So I built a little slide deck, and I presented some stuff on traffic and conversions, and they loved that. And then just after that, I went to visit a friend of mine in Sydney who was speaking at one of those internet seminars. Actually, it wasn't really an internet, it was more an investment seminar. And he was the internet guy. And he said, listen, I've got to go back home in emergency. You fill my spot.
Oh.
And I said, I don't know about that. And he went up to the event organizer and he introduced me. He goes, this guy's going to do my spot. And then he walked off. So I pulled out my presentation that I'd done and I presented to 300 or 400 people. One lady purchased my program, which I think I was selling for about $4,000 or $5,000.
That's a win.
And I was blown away.
Yeah.
Like, I just spoke for like 90 minutes and I got half of $4,000.
Nice.
I'm like,
yeah,
well, that's pretty good. So then I contacted another promoter and said, by the way, I'm now speaking. And he goes, oh, well, you have to come and speak at my event and I'll give you a run. And I went up to Queensland. I spoke at his private event. They all thought I was great and they invited me to speak on a bigger platform which had 500 or 600 people. And I did that circuit for a little while and I didn't really know what to sell. So my friends told me I should sell an event, like a workshop. So I sold a workshop and ran that up in Queensland. There was about 130 people at that workshop. It was a 2-day workshop, and by lunchtime on day 2, they all published their own first website that they'd built from scratch from the day prior. It was amazing. It had laptops and internet
everywhere.
I would never teach that anymore. That was quite some time ago.
Yeah,
and since then, I've run 1 or 2 large events each year, and so now we run an event usually in March, usually in Manly, 200 or 300 people, and we're up to our 12th big event now.
Okay. So,
and I used to run little events as well in between.
So what could somebody, just to close this out, what could somebody expect to I guess a lot of what we've spoken about, but what could they expect to see if they wanted to make their way to a super fast business live event?
They would get absolute world-class experts, like real international. One guy, Tom Breeze, for example, is a student of mine, but he's also like the foremost YouTube advertising expert in the world. He's amazing. He does all the big clients. You would know all the gurus he does. You would have seen them on YouTube if you've ever been there, an ad that he produced.
Yep.
There's Ryan Levesque, who is the Ask guy. He's just did a $3.3 million product launch, and he's got case studies of huge success stories from the surveying of, survey quiz funnel type stuff. He's sharing that sort of stuff. The great thing about it is that they don't have big, long bullshit story of how they were broke and now they're successful, and they don't have a 20-minute sales pitch at the end where you run to the back of the room with your credit card. We don't have credit card machines at the event. We don't have the pitch part. We just have the content.
Good.
And the other people in the room are really quite successful. The average, more than half the people have a 6-figure business already, so they're not dills, and they really value it. So they're an amazing community, and there's people from every state and territory in Australia, and there's internationals coming from the UK and from the USA and New Zealand and Dubai and Asia. They come into this event once a year. It's a really wonderful community, and they also take it online into our online community. Anyone who buys a ticket, if they're not a member, we'll be invited to get access to the recordings from the previous events, and we've recorded pretty much all the last events, so there's an enormous amount of value in that alone.
Okay, for our audiences that may not be able to attend, for those who can attend, can they find that event streaming? Do you do any streaming? Or?
We don't, but we record it and we put it into Superfast Business membership.
Got it, understood.
So they just need to join the membership, which is on a wait list, but it opens up at least once a month.
Okay, so is the link superfastbusiness.com/live? That is correct. Excellent. I thought I'd got it right. I had a look earlier. And look, for any of our audience that wants to go along, just mention the My Future Business podcast show and how we spoke with James, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to see you there. So, James, it's been an absolutely blisteringly informative session, and I thank you so much for spending some time with me and my audience.
Well, thanks for having me on and asking such thoughtful questions.
No, not a problem at all. And it looks like I'll be having a jet over to Sydney early next year.
Great, I hope you have a surf with me.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right then, we'll catch you later.
Alrighty.